mind is like a computer. No matter how efficient it may be, its reliability is only as great as the information fed into it.
That's a campaign promise.
Tell us the truth. Tell us the truth.
We mandate that the truth be told.
You're hearing it.
TNT.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. We're in hour number 2 of this live broadcast here on TNT, Today's News Talk. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host, and as mentioned, I want to welcome a very special guest onto the stage this hour. He is the director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, an experienced hand on Capitol Hill, and a great voice in terms of sanity in U.S. foreign policy. Daniel McAdams joining us right now. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much for having me on, Patrick. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you, Daniel. And, I felt like I was compelled to get in touch with you after seeing what I saw. And a lot of us were amazed and baffled by the scenes in Congress last week. I've never seen anything like it in my life. We've seen a lot of crazy things, Daniel, especially in the last couple of years. But have you ever seen anything like this? What are your impressions, your initial thoughts on this?
I mean, from start to finish, it was downright bizarre. I mean, from from how they structured the rules for the vote that came on Saturday, the votes that came on Saturday, that was that was Speaker Johnson railroading the House Rules Committee, completely abandoning the Republican majority on that committee, spitting in Thomas Massey's face and embracing the Democrats to get a very, very restrictive rule passed. And we can talk about it if you want. I don't want to, get into too much of the weeds, but a very restrictive debate on what should have been an all day or a weekend or 3 or 4 days of debates, of open amendment process, of, everything that the House is supposed to be. No, it was very tightly scripted to get in and get out and get these bills passed. And then it ends, the cherry on top was this insane moment, like something out of, they would say out of, the Soviet Union, or, I don't know, Mao's China, where everyone lifts up their Ukrainian flags in unison, shouting, Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. It's bizarre.
I've got that clip, actually. We're going to play that clip. This is the scene, one of the scenes that Daniel's describing here. Let's roll this. So this is a woman, I guess, Daniel, here passing out Ukrainian flags to various representatives. I don't think she's selling them. I think she's giving them for free. So it is an act of charity. But it is the most bizarre thing. And as I've commented before on this, Daniel, when is the last time you've seen people in Congress waving little American flags? I can't remember. It's been a while. But what is this infatuation with Ukraine?
Well, the bizarre thing is that it seemed like it had been dying down. There was this big push in 22 where everyone was, in love with Zelensky. He was this great swashbuckling freedom fighter. They're always framed in those terms, the people that the U.S. is about to stab in the back. He hasn't gotten his yet, but he will. But that's how he was framed. Remember, he was in front of Congress saying, Bakhmut will be the example of our victory. How'd that work out, Vlad? Not too good. But yeah, this is just pure weird. I was on the phone. My friend, my friend Eric Garris from antiwar.com called me this morning and asked me if I'd watched the debate, and I hadn't, because I had to do some work at home. I had to do some drywalling, which is a lot of fun, right? So he was telling me it was weird. It was weird on the floor. It was weird the way it was completely restricted. And he says, I've been watching Congress since I was a kid. I've never seen anything like this.
It's almost as if Ukraine has got leverage over the Biden administration or the Democratic Party. It was a unanimous vote, Daniel, 210 to 0.
Yeah.
When have you ever seen that for a war appropriation?
And not even the progressives. None of the progressives broke away from the left neocons who run the Democratic Party. None of the people screaming the loudest that they're anti-war. The anti-war coalition between progressives and libertarian conservatives is obviously gone when it comes to this. But the thing is, Patrick, I think it's about more than just this desire to steal money from us and send it to corrupt leaders overseas. In fact, to send it to the military-industrial complex across town. This is also about pulling Biden's chestnuts out of the fire. He's in a bind. This whole thing is about making it more difficult for a Republican campaign commercial to say, first Joe Biden gave away Afghanistan, then he gave away Ukraine, next he'll give away America, something like this. This is all about saving. It's all about saving Joe Biden. And my good friend Jim Jactress says that we've got an evil party and a stupid party. Well, in this case, the Republicans are the stupid party, or at least half of them who voted for this are the stupid party, because they're voting for political cover to Joe Biden. Of course, I'm not partisan in any way, but I'm an observer of what's happening. And these guys are just about as dumb as a bag of rocks.
What do you think about this? Ro Khanna, I spoke about this with our previous guest, Trevor Fitzgibbon, but Ro Khanna is always this kind of anti-war, progressive, voice of reason from California, everything you'd expect, right, from Southern California. And then he makes a statement. He said, Marjorie Taylor Greene said, Mike Johnson needs to resign like yesterday. And Ro Khanna steps forward, says, I and the progressives will help him and protect him because he did the right thing. I mean, this is just insane.
It is insane, and again, this is not about I'm an R, I'm a D, whatever. This is about looking at the process and seeing something that's very strange emerging. And Speaker Johnson may be saved by this outreach to Democrats. He's burned a lot of bridges with Republicans, but not only sort of in a general sense, but in a very specific sense, because he is trying to make a move right now to change the rules for making a motion to vacate the chair. It had been relatively easy, although rarely used, because it can be an own goal. And unfortunately, it was. It turns out that it was when they got rid of McCarthy. Nevertheless, he's going to. It looks like he's going to collaborate or collude, however you want to you put it, with Democrats to change that rule and make it more difficult to remove him from power. And I don't know if you saw Thomas Massey put out a statement on Twitter X earlier today saying, you've got a sitting Speaker of the House changing the rules to make it more difficult to get rid of a Speaker in the House who's in the seat. He said this is something out of a banana republic.
This is like the thing they would accuse Putin or his cohort of doing in Russia, or Xi
Exactly.
in China. So amazing. Now there's another aspect, and this is where things are going to get a little bit bizarre and difficult for some people, Daniel, not for you, of course, because I know you've commented on this previously. So Mike Johnson, congressman from Louisiana, Republican, smooth talking Southerner. He's very he's very presentable. And he comes to the press this week or over the weekend and basically gives the game away with regards to funding for Israel, invokes a sort of biblical end times eschatological Christian evangelical Zionist kind of position on this. I can't believe it. Let's watch this clip. I want to get your reaction. Explain to us what exactly we are looking at here. Daniel, let's roll this clip first. Go ahead.
Israel is a critical ally of ours, and I think most people understand the necessity of this funding. They're fighting for their very existence. They're the only stable democracy in the Middle East. I mean, of course, for those of us who are believers, it's a biblical admonition to stand with Israel. We will, and they will prevail as long as they're with them. And this is an important, very important symbolic gesture and a very important replenishment of their stockpiles, for example, of the Iron Dome. The reason they shot down all those drones and missiles in the last attack by Iran is because we assisted with that. I think the American people understand the importance of that.
So there he is. There he is. What on earth was that all about? I mean, that's not the sort of thing that you say. It shouldn't. Not the third in power in Washington.
I mean, I thought our big beef with Iran was that it was a theocracy. Right? I mean, this is pure theocracy on his part. I mean, for all I care, he could go worship the great god Moloch. I don't care what people worship or if they worship anything, but to somehow invoke his particular very specific, very iconoclastic, unusual, as you say, vision of eschatology as somehow a guiding principle for the United States to embrace is bizarre. It is theocratic. It's, I think, anti-American. And I think actually a lot of people who, quote, believers, as you say, don't agree with him and shouldn't have to agree with him on funding a particular country or doing anything in terms of public policy.
I would have think he would have got gang tackled by the atheist wing of the Democratic Party, which is like practically the whole Democratic Party. Where are they on this issue? So he's saying we need to protect Israel, give it everything that it could possibly want. You've seen this raft of legislation, Daniel, recently. All these appropriations, contingency funds. We need that ready in case Israel needs it. We need this. So what is this becoming here? Is this like a protectorate? A 51st state in perpetuity? What is the long-term plan?
Well, it's always been the case, but what I think is happening now, and maybe it's a silver lining in the dark cloud that has been with us for quite some time, is that we're actually finally having a debate on it. And unfortunately, that debate is resting on the limp bodies of about 40,000 innocent women and children in Gaza. But nevertheless, people are finally having a debate on, okay, what are they bringing to the table? What are we getting for this money? What is the benefit to the United States of basically tying ourselves to right now probably the most hated country in the world, and I think that's why they're kind of retreating to this weird. I mean, they keep trying to throw out anti-Semitism. They keep trying to throw out this sort of biblical thing that's very unusual in particular, but none of it is really sticking like it used to stick. And I think that's probably healthy to have a debate about it. And we're finally seeing that. And I think, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but that's one of the reasons they want to ban TikTok, is because there's a big debate among young people on TikTok who are not listening to their parents or their boomer grandparents, where this was kind of a reflexive, they're our best ally in the world, this sort of reflexive thing. They're a lot more objective. They don't carry that intellectual and emotional, especially emotional baggage when it comes to that country. And I think that's a huge threat to the people who are dying for the status quo.
Yeah, I want to talk about the TikTok bill because this is actually very, very important and really worrying too. But the speaker there called Israel a stable democracy. He says the only stable democracy in the Middle East. And looking at the scenes right now in Gaza and the West Bank, this is a government ostensibly running an apartheid regime in the Middle East. Oppressing the native population by anyone's standard historically. And they seem to be somewhat running a 24/7 hyper-militarized police state as well. So I guess this is the stable democracy model for the United States.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if anyone who was on the hit list of the United States had started an operation where they've slaughtered, 40,000 innocent women and children on the pretext that, well, there might be a bad guy in your village, so we're going to have to flatten your village. Sorry about that. All you guys go down there, you'll be safe. And as soon as you get there, you get bombed. Oh, here's a food truck. You line up for the food truck, you get bombed. I mean, any other country in the world that was doing something like this, the U.S. they would have already gone to war to stop it happening. Look at 25 years ago, this last week or so. We did the same thing for Yugoslavia, where there was nothing like this going on. There was no evidence of a Serbian genocide against the Bosnian Muslims, certainly not on the scale that we're looking at here in Gaza. Yet we bombed them for 70-some days and killed a bunch of innocent people in the name of defending democracy there. And the same thing is true. I mean, we could go down the list. Libya, destroying that country to protect the civilian population when there was no slaughter going on in the civilian population. Well, here we have the pictures in real time. And I was just looking before we started this, Patrick, I was looking at some of and it's very difficult to do, and I don't enjoy doing it, some of these pictures from the bodies that they've dug up on the grounds of that hospital that have shown obvious signs of torture, hands and feet bound. And I won't go into too much detail to not upset your listeners, but very, very obviously a massive human rights disaster that something like we were told in Bucha, we didn't see any photos. The photos we saw were obviously fake. This is the real deal. They're right in front of us, and everyone's pretending not to see.
Yeah, the alleged Bucha massacre. That's one of the sort of main keystones of the policy against Russia, the basis of the ICC criminal court case and indictments and so forth. So again, plenty of evidence here, plenty of opportunity for more international bodies to come in and want to investigate these sort of crimes against humanity. The list is endless. So where then, Daniel, is the responsibility to protect guardians like Samantha Power as a good example, because really her career was built on this concept of R2P, as you call it, the responsibility to protect. I mean, certainly, is there anybody from the Obama administration or any of these R2P practitioners that have stepped forward to, comment on this?
Well, if anything, I don't remember the exact wording, but Samantha Power said a week or so ago that something like she would like to help more, but her hands are tied. It's, hold on, you are the government, you are in the government. What are you talking about? I mean, she likes to play it both ways. And which another example of this, I was just looking at a clip of Nancy Pelosi, the debate on the floor. She was wearing an American flag and a Palestinian flag, if I'm not mistaken. Are you kidding me? I mean, are you serious, Nancy Pelosi? I mean, you are a lifelong supporter of what's being done to the Palestinians right now. How dare you LARP as some kind of a pro-Palestine sympathizer? I mean, it is so disgusting what these people are trying to do now that 40,000 are dead and it's become a political liability. It's all about politics. It's all about the narrative. It's all about the visuals. And now they're going to get on the other side of it, or try to at least.
So this is quite an amazing feat. Now they're trying to basically do two proxy wars, one in Ukraine, one in Israel. I'm calling Israel a proxy war, Daniel, because it does fit a lot of the definitions of a proxy war. And then there's this effort to open up a third front in the Pacific by using Taiwan as a cudgel against China. This is something the Republicans are very big on this issue. If you watch Fox and Newsmax, they're really aggressive on this Taiwan issue. So what are the chances right now? One would say that's crazy. Why would you want to do three proxy wars and escalate in that theater as well? That's insane. But would you put it past this government right now? What are your thoughts on Taiwan and China?
It's not even this government. It's the neocons who control, whether they're R's or D's or left or right. They're the ones who are pushing this. I mean, let's be frank. We got our asses kicked after 20 years in Afghanistan, right? And it's like, oh, okay. We got beat by them. Okay, well, let's take on China. I mean, normal people like your listeners would say, yeah, that sounds crazy. That sounds dumb. We've put our best weapons, some of our best weapons against Russia and Ukraine, and are losing, dramatically losing this war. And so, as so many observers say, the neocons, they don't have a reverse gear. All they know how to do is escalate. And when finally there's a complete barren landscape, moonscape in front of them that they have created with their policies, they never have an ounce of self-reflection. They never say, oh gosh, I guess that was kind of a dumb move. They say, it's your fault. You didn't give us enough money or bombs or whatever it is. It's all your fault. We could have won this one.
I want to get your take also on what's going on this NATO equation with Ukraine over in Europe. And I know you're a very close watcher of European affairs and politics. And I want to get back to the TikTok bill. Maybe we'll take a break in a minute and maybe talk about that TikTok bill after the commercial break. But on Europe right now, where's Europe right now on Ukraine? Tell us what the tea leaves say, Daniel, between Hungary, Germany, Brussels.
Well, Hungary and Slovakia Slovakia is a recent entrant into the "We're Not Insane" group that Viktor Orban founded. We don't want World War III group. We've seen this movie before last century, and we don't want to repeat it. And thanks to really, I followed Robert Fico's career for a long time, and in my opinion, he started out as kind of a bad guy. He was kind of a liberal, but not in a good sense. Kind of a bad guy. His early government had a lot of commie retreads and types on it, kind of a Tusk type of guy. But now, I mean, he's come around. He's very sensible. The new president, I forget his name. Interesting, he has an Italian sounding last name. Very, very sensible on these issues. And I think you're starting to see some movement there. If you look at some of the polls in Germany, if you look at the rise of the Sarah Wagenknecht party, if you look at AfD, which is, the numbers of those two parties, they're very similar, ones on the left and ones on the right. And I'm oversimplifying it, but their success in sucking votes out of the CDU, CSU, out of the liberals, out of not so much the Greens, but certainly the liberals and the Social Democrats. It's pretty remarkable realignment that we're starting to see, and we can start talking about France as well. I mean, look at the popularity of Macron, and the rise of Le Pen, who has a ton of faults, but the one benefit she has is that she's not Macron right now. So I think you are seeing this bubbling below the surface, and it's going to be difficult, I think, for them to contain this in the future, particularly as Europe gets poorer, as it becomes more and more obvious that this was an absolutely boneheaded move, and as it becomes more and more obvious that especially Germany, the driver of Europe, the industrial powerhouse of Europe, the guy who wrote all the checks to pay everyone else, all of a sudden he looks in his account and it's all run dry, and you can't restart this. It's like after COVID, you can't just turn a key and have the economy start again. You turned it off. It's not going to start up again. You've destroyed your industrial base. We could go more into it, but this is a disaster. This is a suicide of Europe. And, I don't know if at some point they're gonna look and say, we screwed up. We followed the US, we followed the neocons in the United States, who have, for longer than a decade, go back to the Orange Revolution in the early 2000s, have wanted nothing more than to pry Ukraine away from any alliance or any association with Russia, which is so ahistoric and so ridiculous. But what was his name now? It just slipped me. The founder of the National Endowment for Democracy, who wrote that famous piece, I think, in the New York Times, "Ukraine is the prize," and this is before the 2014 U.S.-backed coup. It'll come to me. I think you know who I'm talking about. But this has always been their goal, the U.S.'s goal, and the Europeans have followed along, and now they're going to suffer the consequences probably worse than we will.
What I tell people, Daniel, is if the equation in Europe is confusing, just think of it like some plot by the globalist elite to knock the European economy down a few notches and knock Germany down, and just think of the World Economic Forum getting them off fossil fuels, blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, basically trying to destroy the European economy, put it back a few decades. Teach it a lesson, and separate it, as you said, Daniel, from Russia and from Asia. That seems to be the game plan. Seems to be working. Olaf Scholz said this is the end of the fossil fuel era. He decided to make a speech. We're going to wean ourselves off Russian gas. Green energy is the future. Is it the future? It doesn't look like it's done them a lot of favors in Germany, Daniel.
But they're making these big bombastic pledges about it. And then, like, behind the scenes, they're buying gas from Russia. They're just buying it through India and paying double the price. It's absurd. Even the Baltics, who are so insanely, rabidly anti-Russia, they're buying gas from Russia, through third parties. So it's just that they're paying more, they're paying a huge markup. So it's just, it's incredible to see. And it's also incredible to see, speaking of someone like Scholz, the vapidity of Europe's ruling class. I mean, there's a great clip, and I know you've seen it, but it made the rounds a few days ago, of David Cameron with his great interview on Sky News, when he's saying, "This just shows the horrificness of the Iranian regime. How dare they? They're worse than we even thought." And a very astute journalist, an actual journalist, she said, "Well, what would the UK do if someone else bombed one of our diplomatic compounds? We would have a very robust response, i.e. exactly what Iran did." I mean, and he didn't even pause for a second to realize, the hypocrisy of what he was saying. He's like Rishi Sunak, using the hammer the wrong way, as if he's never held one in his hand. Europe is not sending its best, with a few exceptions, I have to say.
Oh yeah, they'll take exception to you, the British saying Europe. They'll say we're not Europe. We're
That's
not
right.
Europe.
That's right.
No, definitely not the best. It's so funny that they dragged David Cameron out of retirement to be the foreign secretary out of the House of Lords, which is bizarre, which means you can't have any foreign policy conversations on the floor of the House of Commons because the secretary is not there. So I don't know. It's just the whole thing is strange.
Yeah, and you have well, I mean, probably it's worse in the UK than anywhere else, where the opposition is identical to the position party. I mean, I can't even, I mean, even in Germany and even in France, there is a pretty decent opposition. Maybe the Netherlands is as bad. I don't know, but yeah, it's a strange situation there.
We're going to take a break right now with the network. I'm here with Daniel McAdams, director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, deep in the heart of Texas. We're going to take a break real quick. When we come back, I want to ask Daniel about the TikTok bill, this move to ban TikTok. What's really behind it? There must be an explanation to this that's not in the mainstream headlines right now. How did this come about?
Well, it's been sort of being battered around for several years. I think Donald Trump originally talked about it when he was the president. He wanted to ban TikTok because those Chinese were behind it, right? And they are out for our precious bodily fluids. But it never went anywhere because, hey, it was Trump's idea. And of course, it was a bad idea because it was Trump's idea, according to everyone else in DC. But suddenly it reared its ugly head again. And I have to say, that it was there's a combination of things that brought this about, and part of it is politics, a part of it is foreign affairs, and part of it is just pure piracy, But the politics part, I think, is a real driving force. And I'm not a user of TikTok. I went on it once to see what it was about, and it wasn't really for me. But nevertheless, as I understand, a lot of young people get their news and get their opinions from it. There are goofy things on it, but there are also intellectuals that are on it as well. It gets used by a broad range, but the one thing that I do know is to this point, there has been limited censorship on it, similar to Twitter. It's not a completely open platform, as I understand it. There has been some censorship, but there is a broad debate. And one of the things that happened after October 7th in the Hamas attack against Israel is that there have been a lot of TikTok videos that express sympathy with what's happening to the Palestinians, that have taken a different view, as we talked about earlier, Patrick, than the Boomer generation, which has been reflexively pro-Israel. The young people, and we on our show we cited a Gallup poll a couple of weeks ago showing that the youth of the United States is definitely not pro-Israel as their grandfather or even parents' generation are. There's a massive shift, and a lot of it's being driven by social media. A lot of it's being driven by TikTok. And what's his name? Greenblatt, the president of the ADL, he was caught on tape in a phone call saying, "We have got a TikTok problem. They are appealing to young people. Basically, our control of the narrative when it comes to Israel is being compromised. We have got to get rid of this." And so, surprisingly enough, a few weeks ago, this bill rears its ugly head to ban TikTok with the excuse that somehow a part of the company is owned by a Chinese company, and therefore they're going to, I don't know what exactly, right? They're going to steal the information from our kids. Or they're going to brainwash them into becoming Chinese communists. They never really explained what exactly the objection was, what exactly the Chinese were doing and what they were going to do with this information. But nevertheless, it was just to make it sound very, very scary. And ironically, Patrick, interestingly enough, a lot of those members who voted to ban TikTok are themselves active TikTok users, and they use it to communicate with their constituents. So a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of media narrative control going into it. And again, the piracy part would be Steve Mnuchin saying, "Hey, I've got a consortium of investors here who would love to buy it for pennies on the dollar." So there's a lot of stuff to unpack about it. But the underlying issue, we talked about it a little bit offline a second ago, the underlying issue is something extremely sinister, worse than everything else I've just said, which is the somehow the desire or the goal of giving the United States president the ability to designate any media website, any application, any server as being foreign adversary controlled and thus subject to being shut down. No due process, no trial, no anything. Just the president says that you are foreign adversary controlled directly or indirectly, therefore you're shut down. Really chilling. Ironically, that's what we accuse the Chinese of doing, right?
Yeah, that's it. The CCP is harvesting your child's data from TikTok, and that's like that was the rally cry when they were sort of starting. And it's like, how does that work? Where's the mechanism of control there? The TikTok is just literally an all-you-can-eat buffet of content, and it just serves you. It's highly addictive, by the way, because it'll serve you up exactly what you're interested in. It reads your habits and of how long you're spending watching stuff, and it'll just give you more of the same. So, like you said, Daniel, if it's intellectual stuff, you'll get more of that. If it's philosophy, you'll get more of that. Politics, or if it's like a cop stopping people for speeding tickets, you'll get more of that. If it's supermodels jiggling their assets, you'll get more of that. So I mean, it's just the kids understand it. Everybody knows what it is. It's not keeping any secrets. It's a massive content farm, basically. And I think it's actually one of the. I don't agree with people spending a lot of time on it personally. If I had kids, I wouldn't be, allowing them to spend 6 hours a day on TikTok. But it is pretty much an open platform from what I can see, Daniel. There's a wide variety of content and views on there. So I think that's good for free speech.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, you can choose, the AI gets to, choose based on your habits, but what the response to it is way more chilling than anything the CCP could even possibly do, which is giving one person, the president, the power to make a designation that, I'm sorry, the TNT Radio, well, they've been very favorable to Putin. They must be, well, maybe not directly controlled, indirectly controlled by foreign agents. Therefore, they are banned from being listened to in the U.S. I mean, it is such a shocking attack on free speech and on our ability to consume whatever information we want. And I gave a speech the other day at a conference that we had with the Mises Institute. And the point is that Americans can consume any kind of media they want. We can consume foreign propaganda. It was decided in a 1962 case, I think it was, that you can consume whatever you want. I mean, when I was a kid, I subscribed to Soviet Life because I thought it was cool. It was interesting. You're allowed to do that. That's we pretend to be free, that we allow an open debate. Now, all of a sudden, it's dangerous. The government is going to protect you from dangerous thoughts. I mean, that is a slippery slope, Patrick.
So all of this is just all the rhetoric and all this legislation, these sort of powers that are being accumulated by the federal government post 2016 election. That's kind of when it all started there. And I do encourage people to watch a recent episode from Unheard, which is a good all-around outlet in the UK, talking about this disinformation governance board, some shadowy international Soros-funded organization that's basically lobbying advertisers to pull their ads from dangerous or suspected disinformation content. So it's the Global Disinformation Index. I think it's called the GDI. And it's absolutely frightening. So they're advising governments. They're giving them all this data that looks all academic, Daniel, but really what are they mapping? They're mapping opposition opinion. They're mapping dissenting views, basically, and then changing that into Russian. You've been accused of being a Russian disinformation agent.
Every day,
I'm sure.
On a good day, every day. Right?
Every day.
If I'm not accused of it, I feel like I'm slacking somehow.
So if your position it happens to comport with that of Sergei Lavrov or some Chinese minister, ergo, that can't be your idea, Daniel. You've had to have gotten that inculcated somehow through TikTok or RT.com or something.
Right.
It was the foreign government that put it there, Daniel.
If I dare say that that Bashar al-Assad was fighting jihadists and U.S.-backed Al-Qaeda, well, obviously I'm under the control. I'm a zombie for Putin or something. I mean, it's insulting to our intelligence, especially for a nation that was literally founded on the idea of political dissent. I mean, that's where we cut our bones. And now all of a sudden, they're trying to squash any bit of political dissent. It really is chilling. We're laughing about it, but to be honest, it disgusts me so much, and it depresses me to see us blindly going down this path of restrictiveness, of the opposite of what we're supposed to be about.
So, how much of this, and I appreciate you staying on with us on this, Daniel, because this is a very important conversation. But we see senators grandstanding on this issue. I'm talking about the TikTok issue and dangerous, malign foreign influences, polluting and warping the minds of supine American people, voters. So, how much of this is grandstanding? You've been in Washington. You know the psychology behind this. What is motivating these senators and congressmen to champion something like this that quite clearly is not what it appears to be? Is this grandstanding? Is this pressure from lobbies? Is this a politician saying, "Here's one I can win. I'm going to get behind this, and it's going to look good"? But explain to us what goes through the mind of a politician here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the above. And what I've said for a long time, and it's absolutely true, is that the members of Congress and senators in the U.S. are the most ill-informed people in the country. I mean, it's just a matter of fact. People believe that somehow I'm not a congressman. I don't have access to that kind of information. They're not interested in any information. It's complete groupthink on Capitol Hill. I mean, for God's sake, we had in this debate on the foreign aid bills, we had literally a member of Congress going down to the floor saying that Russia is run by a Marxist communist dictatorship. He literally said that. I mean, not even like down here, and you've been down here in this neck of the woods, not even a guy living under a tunnel, under a bridge somewhere would say something as absurd. These people are not well informed. They're narcissistic, they're incurious, and they love power. And that is such a dangerous combination. They love ruling over us, but they're not informed whatsoever. I mean, I watched when Speaker Johnson gave his talk just on Saturday about this new axis of evil that emerged. If you watch him, every other word he looks down because his staffer had handed him a 3x5 card or a 5x7 card with all the talking points on it. And I remember what they were like. Dr. Paul was not into talking points, but all of the other staffers like me, the boss said, I don't want to know the details about this bill. Just give me 5 talking points. And that's exactly what Speaker Johnson had. And you could see him. He looked down and he read one. He was good at it. He's a good actor, but he didn't develop these thoughts himself. He had some staffer who had been in the system most likely for a long, long time, for decades. You can change your congressman, but you can't change the staffers. They're always there. They stay there unless they become lobbyists, of course. So they're the ones who really run things. And the members they don't care. They don't care. He just read his talking points and that's it.
That's an important reality, is that the staffers are the surrogate brain of the members, of the representatives. They totally rely to be briefed on pretty much everything. And then the staffers get their stuff from think tanks and lobbyists, and they get their bullet points and so forth. And I think give full credit though, Daniel, they do watch Fox. The Republican members watch Fox and the Democrat members watch MSNBC. So at least they get that. They get some, news from there.
Yeah. I mean, I used to go to, when Dr. Paul was on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I would go to all the committee hearings with him, obviously, to back him up on it. And I would bring my stack of reading papers and I would look around at the other staffers, and they all had Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, nothing more daring than that, of course. And I'm here with antiwar.com and LouRockwell.com and Counterpunch, all of these dangerous publications, because I wanted to inform myself and inform my boss. But they're just not interested in anything outside the very, very narrow mainstream view. They have this perception that, Fox and MSNBC are so different. They're not different at all. They're not different at all. They have the same way of thinking, a way of framing things in a very narrow way.
Yeah, and the problem in Washington is that the Venn diagrams unfortunately overlap across religious extremism, the military-industrial complex, funding for Israel, GOP funding, Democrat Party funding. All of these things just converge in this crazy Venn diagram, and that's kind of Washington in a nutshell.
Very, very sad. And it's gotten a lot worse. And I mean, it's been, 11 years or so since I've been there. It's gotten a lot worse from what I can see. Because at least when I was there, we had regular order where you brought bills to the floor, especially appropriations bills, and members could offer unlimited amendments, could try to shape a debate. Now everything is controlled by a very, very narrow, thin layer of leadership who presents you a bill, and then they restrict the rule on debating the bill like they did over the weekend in such a shameful way. And that's probably why members get involved in so much mischief, because there literally is not very much to do on the job. They don't have to do anything like we had to do, which is build coalitions and find ways of defeating bad things, and it's just all of that, at least right now, seems to be gone. Speaker Johnson promised to bring it back. He didn't.
That's how Washington really works, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope we can change it. That's what we're here for. That's why we're raising awareness on these key issues. Daniel McAdams, director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity in Texas. Thank you for joining us on TNT this week.
Thank you, Patrick. It's great being with you.
Be sure to follow Daniel McAdams on X, formerly known as Twitter. That'll keep your finger on the pulse of the political conversation in America, where you need to be. Where we are going now is to the end of the program. State of the Nation coming up. You want to stay on TNT, Today's News Talk. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host, signing out. I will see you guys later on, and a big thank you as well to our guest, Trevor Fitzgibbon, in the first hour, and a big thank you to our listeners and everyone in the TNT chat community. Take care, you guys. All the best.